All right, so hello everyone out there in virtual land. I'm Michael Naylor, and I'm a recovering type 4 on the Enneagram, in the Enneagram world, and still recovering, and also the director of the main Enneagram Center for Transformation and Well-Being. And today I have a dear friend, Deb Taylor here, a beloved type 2, who's going to take us on her journey, the agony and the ecstasy of the two and everything in between. And I met Deb several years ago doing workshops and through Unity. And Deb is a licensed and what's that other word?
Ordained.
Ordained. There we go. Licensed and ordained Unity minister, and just really deep and sweet heart. Really carries the essence of the two in my experience. So that said, thanks so much for being here. And, maybe just start with how you learned about the Enneagram, or, and then sort of how it progressed, and, and anything else that really feels relevant to your spiritual journey.
Okay, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
I learned about the Enneagram in seminary, and I remember vividly that the professor came out and he gave us all the Enneagram test, and we all announced our top 1 and 2 scores. And I remember raising my hand saying, I don't think this possibly could be me. So I need to be a different number. And he laughed and he said, "Has it got you a little riled up?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Then you're that number." And then that was in 2004, and that began my journey of denial of being a 2. I love your term recovering 2. But I was pretty asleep to my 2-ness even after I knew about it, because it just was, it's my core being. And it was like, how do you deny your core essence, even though you don't like all that you just read about it or learned about it?
Yeah.
So I began a journey of, okay, how do you first of all acknowledge and believe you're a 2? For any other 2s that are out there, I've talked to many that have had the same experience. We don't want to be 2s. And I was already really involved in my spiritual journey. I was a hospital chaplain. I'd worked in the hospitals for my clinical rotation. I was all about helping others. And until probably about 6 months ago, which is wild. Didn't even realize the seduction of helping others. I saw it as, and I remember in one of your classes, how do you know that this isn't the way we're all supposed to be, and being kind and being in service and seeing that light in each other? How can you all not be? And so that was very confusing to me, to be in one of your classes and have this dialogue going. And I just couldn't believe that they just didn't believe the way I did.
Seems like the only window one would be looking out of, right?
Yeah,
The window of the two.
and it's a goodness thing. And I was raised to treat people kindly, and
Yeah,
treat others as you would like to be treated was my whole mantra.
yeah.
So now what do I do? And learning about oddities in health for a 2, and which we can talk about later. I just began trying to layer in the knowledge, acknowledge my lifestyle and my contribution to being a 2 that I had to wake up to. So I was a hospital chaplain, and I remember saying, how hard can it be to be any kind of a minister at a church if I've been 10 years in a children's trauma hospital? Can't be hard. And I did hospice for 3 years. And counseling's my background. And being a chaplain to my seminary class, helping them all get established as they'd move in from out of state, and I was local, so let me go look at apartments for you. I mean, isn't that what we all do? Apparently not.
Well, certainly the Jedi gift of the Type 2, and it is, for all of us, our type is both a blessing and then there's the curse side.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, one of the things that I notice in twos, because I'm surrounded by twos in one form or another, but they have that beautiful generosity and kindness towards people, and just that empathy that's just right there. and the only thing I notice that seems to get in the way is sometimes they don't have it for themselves, or they sort of, it's just not a part of where their attunement goes. What do I need right now? But
Right.
and that seems like, that takes a long time to become conscious of, and like, I just think of my own type 4 patterns. After I learned I was a type 4, good grief, it took me years and years before I could actually use it consciously. I knew the story in my head, but to live it was a really slow but steady work. So as a 2, what I wonder if you'd say a little bit about the challenge around, I guess one word might be over-helping, or leaning into over-nurturing, or nurturing and not noticing, oh, they don't really want me to nurture them right now, but I know what they need. But any variations on that would be great.
For me, it was, it's so drilled into me since college about being a helper, and way prior to that, if I sit back and think about it. But academically, and I would see the rewards of helping. I worked on a rape victim crisis line, and I mean, if you're ever needed, that's the time.
Yeah.
But I thought I was always doing it to help others, but I wasn't honoring my own boundaries. And I would just keep giving. And then I'd turn around and I'd be finished with that, and I'd turn around and took on a church, and that grew to 220, and I'd continue giving, and I'd come home and I'd have these terrible migraines, and I'd need to take a nap because of that empathic part of me, that intuitive part of me was absorbing all that. And when I started realizing I was carrying other people's energy, and I needed to protect myself, so I was able to work through that. But by then, this was 10 years ago, by then my health was already going down. And yet I kept thinking the way to make me healthier was to give more. Everything was very outside me driven. And so that, I had a health scare that was pretty significant, and I got myself into counseling, and she said, you're able to walk the Enneagram talk, but you're not turning it this way. And I literally, Michael, I had no idea what she was saying. Even though I'd been doing counseling and I was a counselor, the human part of me was about my value, obviously, about giving. And she'd say, so what have you done for yourself in the last month? And I'd say, take a 5-minute walk. I did that for you. I sat quietly for 3 minutes. I didn't return their phone calls right away. It was just minutia. And
well, it's amazing that I often think it's amazing that I even get glimpses of these things, because, like, with my beloved type 2 wife, the time between recognizing somebody needs something and she's in movement is less than a second. It's just boom, 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 and it's quite so that whole thing, twos that I've talked to over the years have said, the idea of sitting still for 10 minutes meditation. They go, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, it's like, it says, I feel like my body is launching out of the chair the whole time. And there's people who need me, and I see them, and I'm saying, "I'll be with you in 8 minutes." But, just really
So true.
challenging,
Or I need to multitask if I'm sitting.
Yes.
So, maybe I'll catch up on that TV show, but I can be quiet. I'm not talking to anybody on the phone. I'm just listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was so in denial about that. And health literally kicked me in the face that I needed to start getting honest and very quickly. And
Mhm.
all sorts of doctors from different modalities that were addressing the crisis were saying, how about your self-care? And I go, oh yeah, I've got that. I live with a vegetarian. I eat really healthy, and so
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Well, it's not such an easy thing to see, is it? I mean, you
no.
can have all the head knowledge, but when it comes to actually breathing it's a whole nother story. And uh, it's almost like, we're given a sort of I think of it sometimes, the analogy that we inherit a certain kind of car, and the car of the two is just goes wherever it's needed, just takes off, doesn't even need any signals, there it goes. And the thing that can be challenged, I think, is that there is a certain satisfaction that comes from giving and helping people, and then it has a kind of way of blocking my sense around what I need. It's like it's just isn't on the
Absolutely.
screen of my perception. So there are a
Correct.
lot of twos will say that the way they started to learn about this was through a health crisis of some kind,
Mm-hmm.
and and then it took a while. Like the health crisis
Mm-hmm.
needed to sort of pound them for a while, and then
Mm-hmm.
something broke through. And I don't. So, like, what is it like for you today to notice those two forces? That one part of you that knows nurturing is important. I've learned that, and then there's this other part that still would give. If I had all my energy going,
Mm-hmm.
I would be there in a heartbeat. So, what's
I
that
am
like today?
so glad you asked this question because it's where I've been trying to live from.
Yeah.
Um, First is mindfulness. I
Mhm.
had to keep adequate mindfulness and check myself several times a day.
Mhm.
Of what's your motivation for why you're doing that right now? Go deeper. How is it serving you to take care of them and set aside your stretching and yoga,
Mhm.
or whatever? How is it serving me to continue to keep moving and
Mhm.
avoid self-care? That was a big, big question.
Yeah.
And I had to get accountable, really accountable. In the meantime, health stuff's still coming in, and it's not a game anymore. It's not just to make me feel good to take care of them. I
Mhm.
also had to get in touch with what they call in seminary the savior complex, which
Mhm.
I didn't have because I'm a humble minister. But what I know, I knew you'd like that. What I learned is that I did come into the world, as you have taught, with that Enneagram number. And my upbringing was all about service. My mom died when I was 10.
Mm.
Somebody needed to keep an eye on my 3-year-old little sister. And so I
Mhm.
stepped in and took the emotional service on that. And it just perpetuated everything at parties of my grandparents. I'd be the one checking on I mean, it was ingrained.
Yeah.
So flash forward to today, enough health challenges have come in, and I've
Mhm.
had a number of surgeries that
Mhm.
I finally realized if you don't stop, nobody's going to be able to get in there and do much of anything to help you.
Yeah.
So you have to make yourself your own church. You
Mhm.
have to be your own congregant,
Mm.
and you have to be your own client.
Mm.
And what if you stopped giving and depleting yourself? And so one of the things I did in the last 6 months is I said goodbye to my counseling practice. Even as
Mhm.
I say that, I'm slowing down,
Hmm.
and I turned it into an art studio.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, so
That's
I go in there
awesome.
every couple of days and I tell myself 5 minutes, that's all you need. Whether it's meditation,
Hmm.
walking, going to
Hmm.
the gym, or
Hmm.
drawing. Go in and do 5 minutes. And if you
Awesome.
want to keep going, keep
Hmm.
going.
Awesome.
So I've been amazing myself by the amount of creativity and energy flow.
Beautiful. That is that's that direction of four, and
Yeah.
my wife has that too, and about every 5 years she remembers to paint, and she does some beautiful painting, and then it's like, okay, now I got to go back to work, and I'll say, well, what gives you the most joy aside from the kids and all, and she say, oh, I love to paint. So, well, isn't it
Mm,
interesting how hard it is to get to that? And she said,
yeah.
yes, it is. It's like I've got so many thoughts in my head about who I should be helping that I
Hmm.
forget it. So it's great that you're starting a practice and you got a space
Hmm.
for it. And
Oh, it's lovely.
yeah,
I have
beautiful.
a tiny little counseling section
Hmm.
carved out in that room,
Yeah.
but compared to the gigantic room that it was with all the files and yeah,
Wow.
no. And
That's
I,
good.
I'm watching how hard it is to walk away from the term my office
Mm.
to my playroom.
Mm.
That has been a huge leap in language that I still don't have mastered,
That's
but
awesome, though.
I'm gonna
That's
get. And I've gone back
beautiful.
to the gym this week, and PT is saying you're doing great.
Mm.
It's starting to get lovely here, so a little more walking. I eat healthy. Um, yeah,
Awesome.
and I'm also, here's probably the biggest thing for me. I realized how depleted I was. I get glimpses of it now more that I can hold on to longer.
Yes, I
And
was gonna just, yeah.
And then, so I'm not reacting, I'm responding more. So do I have the energy to call that person and why am I doing it?
Hmm.
And I'm sending people little texts and emails and just I don't, you know, you're gonna here's I refer you to and leave it to the universe to test to see how much you really want to get this and heal. Since I announced on my birthday last year I was retiring, I have counted 12 new clients I could have had, and I could have done 5 different funerals. And I've said no to every one of them, and some are
Wow.
really hard to say no to, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm doing it.
Well, you point to something that seems really important. I've noticed with twos is that their ability to notice when they're depleted is kind of a low flying signal that they don't really get until they're either flat on their back and exhausted. Uh, but it sounds like you're really hearing it or noticing it, and but that whole sense of really feeling on a sensing level, I'm depleted. It seemed like the override button is, well, that's okay. Just start helping, and it sort of
Yeah.
disappears for a while until I get sick or something
Mhm.
happens. But that's really powerful that you're noticing. And if you when you think about your journey through this, I wonder if uh, there's anything that might have helped you earlier on, just in a teaching or and when you think back of it, like there's other twos in the world coming up, following that path of caring, and
Mhm.
I wonder. It's not an easy thing to see usually because you can't see it, right? It's like
Mhm. Mhm.
I can't see what I can't see until I bump into it. But I wonder if anything comes to mind for
Mm.
you or the beloved twos. And
For wish I had been headed off at the path sooner
yeah,
to for
just
healthy.
more
Is that what you're asking?
yes, to be more to get to balance a little sooner. Uh,
I would have to say get honest as fast as you can by sticking with the feeling, whatever the feeling is. Again, I alluded to how does this serve me? That has been my
mhm,
mantra for 25 years.
yes.
And when I would get the answer, oh, it makes me feel good, don't stop there. Keep going down. And how does that serve me? And
Mm.
then, oh, because I feel valued. And how does that serve me? And so I just kept
Mm.
dialing down and learning how
Yeah.
to do it. That one question can
Mm.
take you miles deep.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then am I reacting to needing bonding?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
for me, it's
Connection.
bonding.
Yeah. Bonding,
And
connection.
relationships are why I'm here,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
That. But what about the one with me? Oh, I'll get to that. No,
Hmm.
how does it serve me not to tend toward me?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's so energy's so outward and connecting with the other, and being a great support for that. But I like the way you use the idea of how about that bonding with myself? What does that
Hmm.
mean? And
Yeah.
how do I feel it and nurture it? And it seems like the inner critic of the two says, if you're not doing it for somebody else, it's kind of selfish. And
Yes. Narcissistic.
yeah, that's so
Ooh.
you can't do that. And so I'll
Hmm.
notice twos will get a lot of people into counseling, but may not get there themselves, except
Hmm.
maybe later on. But yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So that's that passion for. I really do think on a deep level, and this is just my theory for what it's worth, is that twos have a kind of intuitive core sense
Hmm.
of the potential that exists for people being in connection.
Hmm.
And then on a personality level, it gets mixed up with all sorts of things that may not serve that, but it comes from a deep place, I think. So it sounds like
Hmm.
you were really attuned to it when you were a little one too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or I was being reinforced
yeah.
positively with, oh, thank you, honey. You're so sweet. Okay, I'll get some more of that.
Of course, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
think it's learning your value
yeah,
before you make everybody else more valuable.
yeah. And I just think of, you know, uh, my next time through this rodeo, if I have a little type 2 kid, uh,
Mm-hmm.
like, will I be aware enough to help them turn the spotlight on themselves from time to time? Because my daughter was a type 9,
Mm-hmm.
and she was so good at becoming invisible, I didn't even notice she went invisible. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going, wow, I missed that one. So, yeah, it's quite a challenge. And that little, you know, uh, granddaughter that I've seen on Facebook, it looks like
Mm-hmm.
such a sweet soul. You have a sense of type, and it's way early to know type, but she looks like such a sweet soul.
Mm-hmm. I'm making I'm I'm making all sorts of um, observations, but it's really hard for me to type little kids.
It's hard.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
it's pretty hard.
she's very good about sharing, and we reinforce her behavior. But I'm trying really hard not to say, "You are such a sweet girl," you know. Um,
Do more
so
of that.
appreciate the behavior and acts of service, but
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, what do you want? I keep turning it back to what do you want? Well, good for you.
yeah,
And
yeah.
um,
Wonderful.
so it's a different kind of reinforcement than I had growing up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the other sort of interesting things that twos will report is that they can be, when they're stressed and less present, very conscientious around whether people receive their loving action or not. And we
Mm,
call it terms of endearment.
mhm,
Like, um, I think of, my beloved wife having to deal with a type 4 uh, who's too self-involved from time to time and just misses all the cues. But she might do something that's really kind and generous, and I won't notice it, and she'll like go, "What happened? What did I do wrong? I gave him
mhm.
one card. Maybe I need to give him five just to penetrate his numbness." But uh, what have you noticed that sort of sense of, am I landing and being received as a loving person? Is that kind of sensitivity early on been sharp for you, or?
I yes, I would say your question is an excellent one. Another one. Um, I believe in expressing who I am and saying, I see the light in you,
Hmm.
see the light back in me.
Hmm.
And so, and for me, kindness is, I think that's the reason why the world is as messed up as it is. Spoken like a two right now. But if we would all
True.
be a little more kind and a little more in service,
Yeah.
I mean, just a little. I'm not saying you have to go to the far out twos level, but just try and less judgment. Again, treat each other as we want to be treated is my mantra.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are times that the stressed person in me will do things to try and get a response, as you were talking about. And if it doesn't happen, then I used to get crushed about it. Uh,
Hmm.
and it would just take me days and I'd ruminate on what did I do wrong. And
Hmm.
a good counselor told me like 20 years ago, she said, when you do that, you're you're assuming they don't have an opinion, and it's kind of narcissistic a little bit
Hmm.
to say,
Self-absorbed.
what is it that I did wrong?
Uh-huh.
Maybe I did nothing wrong. Maybe a car pulled out in front of them. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? But to give people the room to be who they are, I think
Yeah.
that's called less codependent.
Yeah. 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 Well, certainly, all the types can have flavors of this. Twos and I think are sort of the masters, experience it a little more than others. But appreciate just the work you've done on yourself to sort these things out. And I think it's so important for me to say is that this is a slow journey. It's not fast.
Yes.
Uh, and many
Yeah.
mistakes will get to be made. And if I can bring compassion to my interesting neuroses and not beat myself up, then I can have better eyes to see it and relax a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
say I'm sorry sooner. But it's a slow process, and it's kind of like one of my teachers said. It's kind of like climbing a mountain on your hands and knees. That's what this coming into consciousness is, and guess what? Everybody's climbing, even me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that just what you've shared about what you've learned so much in these past years, and sometimes I remember this one teacher said, some patterns you need to observe them 10,000 times before they release. I'm going, that's about right. I
Mm-hmm.
started looking when I was 40, and then around age 63. Oh, that's what that was. I've been looking for so long. So, there's just, it's humbling but real, I think. So, sounds like you have some agreement with that.
And I would say my health issues, if I get way honest, way back, my health issues started in my teens.
Hmm.
So I was already overgiving.
Yeah.
And I guess I equate my exhaustion and my bucket being empty. And depending on other people to fill my bucket,
Yeah.
I was already depleted by late teens, early 20s,
Yeah.
already turning gray. I mean, I was, it was, and yet I kept doing it. And this is crazy, a side thing, but since the last year, since I've started really putting into practice, um, oddly enough, my hair is showing up darker.
Well, that's quite
Isn't that
something.
weird?
Well, I think you got
Me
to
is
get
very
that out there in the world. If you
yeah.
stop overworking, your hair
You don't
will
need a
turn.
box of hair dye. You just need to work on yourself.
That's great. I love that.
It's kind of
Oh,
kind of humorous, but also kind of sad. And the other thing I did, Michael, is that I didn't realize I was doing is I was futurizing or pastizing. I wasn't present. And I would sit back and I was always taught, you think 5 steps ahead and you think about the consideration of others.
Mhm.
And I'm learning to let go of the 5 steps. I'm learning to live in the present more. I have to constantly call myself back in and go, check, I'm doing it again. Okay. And I just have to say the word check,
Yeah.
and I'm blown away how much of the time I was living out there. So I wouldn't have to feel in here.
Yeah. Well, that's what do we say in recovery? That peeling the onion, as you learn more, and then I still I have times when I will look back down the timeline of my life and go, "Oh my God, I miss most everything. How'd that happen?" And then,
and
I
don't
mean,
and then don't just beat yourself up about it.
that's right. Just go. You're lucky to be here. Most everyone else is probably caught in a trance of their own. So, uh,
Mhm.
yeah. So another little sort of subject piece that sometimes too say they have a hard time with is the expression of anger. Being angry and saying this. This really hurt me or whatever. Just coming out. You could say that it's the arrow to 8, which is I can own my space and say, knock that stuff off. That's not working, if I
Mhm.
need to protect myself. So, what have you noticed about your relationship with anger or
Yeah.
just a sort of empowered action?
My anger wasn't allowed as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not taught to me how to do successful, healthy anger.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see the beginning and the completion to the end. I just saw you can't go there. Um, and my anger scared me for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And little by little I'd feel, but I could only feel for a few seconds. And I would, like many women, jump right to forgiveness because it's not acceptable to be angry. If you're a loving, kind person and you're a 2, God forbid, you do not get angry, and especially to anybody else, you go this way with it
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
you swallow it.
Yeah.
And that's not serving me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting one. Because I noticed, years ago with my wife, if she was angry with me, she could hold it for about a second, and then she would compliment me. And I would say, "Hun, I was just the biggest jerk on the planet today. This does not deserve a compliment." And she was
Yeah.
just, it was so that whole thing, and I can forgive really fast. And that is one of the gifts of the 2. They tend to have a forgiving heart, but it's like sometimes it can be in service of avoiding my anger, my discomfort with anger. Which the culture has certainly drilled into. A lot of men got that message too. I know I did when I was a little boy. But so today, when you feel anger, you experience it in your body, and duct tape your kids to the wall, and what happens?
Depends on what they did, because it's all about them, not me. So
Absolutely.
I I will sit on my anger, and first of all, I have to recognize that I'm angry because I'll do the I'm disappointed, I'm upset. Are you angry? "Mm, yes. Now what do I do with it? And instead of coming out with my claws of my 8 under
Mhm,
stress,
mhm,
I I will try and go within again. It's very active, conscious. Okay, I'm really ticked.
mhm,
Breathe, breathe. Don't react.
mhm,
And
mhm,
what am I really needing is what my question has become. Because
mhm,
if I can get underneath that anger and sit with it
mhm,
and get quiet,
mhm.
um, it's usually a code for I need bonding. And my husband, after 45 years of marriage, has gotten really good at saying, I I'm kind of sensing you need bonding, which is a if you're talking to an 8 under stress 2, you might lose your life on that question.
I have to kill you now. I'm so sorry.
But I'm not angry. You did this and this, and
Oh,
the counselor I worked with for years said, look at your story, get deeply honest about your story. If you're putting your smiley face on, who's that really for? And
oh,
are you running victim? Oh, that upset me when she said that. So I knew she had a hit on me. And I'm not a victim. I stand strong. I help other people. And okay, well, I was running some victim in there. And then not to beat myself up about that.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
then I'd just be
yeah,
onslaughted by the terrorizer, that would come in.
absolutely. Yeah,
So it wasn't safe to be angry very much.
yeah. What's that idea that whatever I beat up in myself, I strengthen in myself and keep it unconscious? One of the things I've been studying a lot is this idea that whatever my reactive patterns are, if I judge myself and then inflict guilt on myself, that's a part of the pattern and keeps it
Yeah.
circling. But it gives me the idea that I'm doing something about it. Well, yes, I am.
Yes.
I'm spinning the wheel.
Yeah. And I'm
I'm,
doing some undue, unnecessary suffering, but by
yeah,
golly, I know how to do that.
yeah, I'm quite good at it. Actually, I should get paid for it sometimes. But uh, yeah, well, just such great insights, and there's a real delicacy to this kind of inner work and having it named and then sit with it. And so I imagine at some point there might be, how to travel the labyrinth of the type 2 from Deb Taylor. We're looking forward to that. But yeah, so any other things about twos that people don't understand? Like sometimes twos get accused of giving to get, and that never resonates for me. It feels like they give for connection, to have connection, but it's not to. But it's not such a. It's definitely not a conscious manipulation. It's just a
Correct.
response from the core. So, I mean, what's been your experience around that idea of? Or,
I've been accused of that by people that don't know me very well, and so they question why I'm giving, and
yeah.
I'm constantly giving, and that hurts. And I have to get honest about that. Maybe there's a part of me that I was doing it, and I was totally asleep to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was really young, I would give a gift and hope to get a gift back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That goes into all the love languages, but there was a big
Mm-hmm.
part of me, it's like, I'm showing you my love,
Yeah.
and so show me back. And
Mm.
it wouldn't come, and it'd be
Yeah.
like, I'd be crushed.
Yeah.
And I had to
Yeah.
sit and look at that and go, is that a form of manipulation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If I was giving to get.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
or I'd give a compliment to a telemarketer. I don't know why, but I mean, I was nothing bad about telemarketer, but I mean, what was I trying to achieve there? Well,
Mm-hmm.
for me, my bottom line is I believe that every human being has a magnificent, unique story, and I want to be on the planet to
Mm.
pause long enough to listen.
Mm.
And
Oh, that's
if
beautiful.
it's the gas station attendant or the lady in the bathroom that's cleaning the toilets, I did that the other day. I just said, thank you so much for what you're doing. And
Mm.
she burst into tears and
Oh.
sunk down onto the floor. And she said, nobody ever thanks
Mm.
me. They only
Oh,
tell me what I missed.
yeah.
And all I did was take 1 second to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge another human being's process.
Yeah.
And we're starving for that. So,
Yeah.
but acknowledge each other's stories and
Mm.
lives and light.
Mm.
And that's my whole reason for being.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I need to honor my own story and my own light a lot more.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's where the memoir comes in.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, there was something else that was popping up as you were speaking. Um, yeah. So let's see. It was an offshoot of the question of anything I haven't talked about that, would help people to not misjudge the type 2? For instance, they're giving to get or whatever, and just sort of a black and white kind of thing. And the kinds of
very judgmental.
Yeah, very judgmental. Yeah. Anything else that pops up for you in terms of your journey?
Ask me. Don't assume you've got it. Ask me about my motivation. I mean, I'd rather you do that than make a story about my motivation and call me manipulative.
Yeah.
And the other part is we are an extremely intuitive bunch as our force. And don't belittle the two who notices the most random stuff, because we can't help but see stuff that other people don't. And I've had conversations with other twos about that, and they said, yeah, people don't realize how deep we really are, and we also can go very intense. For me, I don't want to sit around and talk about my vacuum cleaner and pickles. I want to find out, where are you at around this topic? But I have to be careful not to be intrusive, because I'm so passionate about making connection that I can sometimes go under and in too fast.
Yeah. Great to notice. Yeah, that passion combined with the wish to know can be compelling.
And the intuition.
Yeah,
if I come into a room, I can feel the person who's the saddest, and I'll gravitate toward them. And it's like, stop. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? How's this serving you? But usually the radar for it too is just going, there's a person in need, go there.
Yeah. Well, one of my two friends says, I can foresee what people need, and before I know it, I'm moving towards them and then telling them about it, and they may be going,
stand down.
Not good time. Not wait on that.
Yeah.
But the other, I think that one of the words I use or labels I use for the two is the intuitive healer. There's the giver, there's the helper, but there's this intuitive healing part that I've experienced with twos that sort of goes beneath the surface with their connection with loving kindness, with their intuitive wishes for people. But it's a powerful force, and I don't think it gets named as often as it could be. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I've been in the healing business one way or another since my 20s.
Yeah.
And running nonprofits that were in trouble, and churches and counseling and hospitals, and going into psych units where nobody else would go in, and doing it more than 2 minutes. And it's a deep intuitive desire to heal the pain on the planet without taking that pain on. That's the hard part.
Yeah, I think that's the core. That's the real core of the two, in my experience. And then the challenge is, how do I master that and not be eaten by it, because it's so powerful, and it mixes up with all the crazy impressions I took in on planet Earth. But I guess that's why it's a school. We get to graduate to from first grade to second grade every so often, and sometimes up to seventh grade. I'm always happy when that happens. So that said, anything that you would want to. I say this question because, what would you tell a young two coming up through the ranks? And and I say, well, what would I tell a four? I'd say, good luck, and you're just going to have to make a lot of mistakes and try to keep good people around you, and things will settle at some point, and you'll go, whew, I survived. But what would you say to a type two?
I would say check in. And when you're done, check in again and some more. Learn how to check in, because you can do it at levels like you talked about. And we always teach what we need to learn. So if I'm giving,
Mm,
maybe I need to be giving to me.
mm,
So
beautiful.
instead of
Yeah,
go that way, go this way.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the magic turn right there, and yeah, yeah. Well, I do hope you know, the lessons that you are transmitting today, they're just a part of your being. So there's no words need to be said, but I just appreciate what you've said today, and
Mm,
yeah, just great
thank
to
you.
be with you. Great to be with
Thank you
you,
for
and
inviting me to do this. This is important,
absolutely, just
what you're doing.
really beautiful stuff, um, and just for those of you out there in virtual land, my book is now on Audible. Will be on Amazon soon, but it's out there on
Excellent.
different formats. And so I feel like I've finished that project, and I've had so much learning about the types from people like you. And it's really, to me, the deepest learning has come from personal conversations with people and how
Mhm.
they've journeyed. And there's just something that it's hard for the page to capture. So anyway, so this is a beautiful teaching. So thank you for that.
Thank you for being the healing minister you are to all of
Oh,
us.
thank you.
And are you sure you're not a two?
Well, I've been pulled towards more two-ishness in these last 20 years. So that's good. I'm a little less self-absorbed. The two needs to get more self-absorbed. So
Yeah,
anyway, we're here to
I'm
balance it.
working on it. I'm working on being
Yeah,
more self-absorbed.
yeah.
And I decided not to call myself selfish but I call myself self first. So self first.
Oh, I like that.
That's my new language.
That's beautiful. I
So I
like
get
that.
rid of the judgment of selfish.
Yeah, it's a bad word.
Yeah.
I think in recovery we often say health. You need to develop healthy selfishness, and that's different than defensive posture to protect oneself. But I like your word better. So
You
self
can have
first.
my word, self first.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
yes, my blessings. I'm gonna turn this